All right, so we've got a short session here. We're doing the 30-minute expert series. So since we've got some short time, let's go ahead and get started today. I want to thank everyone for joining us for attending another webinar in the 30-minute expert series. As you can see on screen, the topic today is going to be connecting estimates to field operations with B2W Estimate. So I'm going to be showing you different ways to set up the estimate and also the export to connect the estimate to field operations. Also show you the different information that's shared with your operations platform. And that's not just B2W Track, which is going to take a lot of the information that we're going to talk about today, but also the information is being shared with all of the operations elements. Some things are being shared with B2W Schedule, Track, Maintain, and also Inform. So let's do some introductions. My name is Mark Hooks. I'm a Senior Solutions Engineer here with B2W Software. Been with the company 11 and a half years now. I started as a trainer and an implementer for the company, and now I do the product demonstrations as a solutions engineer. Alongside me is Mr. Anthony Salvatore. He has had a very similar path through the company, training, implementation, and now he as well as one of our solutions engineers that shows the products, and also it gets involved in the webinars and things that you'll see on screen. Anthony's going to be taking a mostly silent role today, so he can help us out with taking the questions, using the questions panel that you have on your login screen. Now, we're going to do our best to answer questions as we go along, but sometimes if the question is really geared towards your company or very niche, we may have to take that offline after the webinar. And in fact, the things that we're going to be talking about today can be so customized per individual bid or job, we may have to take some of these offline if you have your questions. So for the session overview, we're going to first be just basically going over and talking about the connecting of estimates to field operations, and then we'll open up the product. We'll look inside B2W Estimate, show you the different ways and the different levels of coding and things like that we can do, the export settings that we can manage to get the information from the estimate to field operations. And then I'll actually go over to field operations, to the operations suite of products, and show you the information that gets shared over. And then again, we'll do our best to have some time for questions and answers at the end of the demonstration today as well. So B2W Estimate. Now, we do have some folks on the webinar that don't use any of our elements. So the folks that use the products, bear with me just a second while we talk about B2W Estimate for those folks. B2W Estimate, for the folks who haven't seen it, is an enterprise class estimating and bidding solution. It provides centrally stored cost data that you can reuse from bid to bid to bid. And that's things like your labor types with cost, equipment, materials, crews, pre-built tasks containing all of your underlying cost. It's filled with really specialized functionality for creating estimates from those user-defined templates, stored items, even stored templated bids that you can reuse to create your estimate. And as with all of our products, it's very intuitive. It's an easy-to-use application. We really spend a lot of time on making sure the user interface stays simple for the folks that use the product. B2W Estimate, it's enterprise class. It really is made so you can maximize accuracy and speed while you're putting together a bid, and really standardize in a lot of ways the estimating process. Really giving the estimator time to spend more time on really the strategic bidding in the back end, all coming together to win more bids at better margins. Now, the field operations tool that I keep referring to has multiple different elements. There's B2W Schedule, there's B2W Track, there's B2W Maintain, and also B2W Inform. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those as we go through the demonstration, as I talk about the information that's being shared for the estimate for all those different products I just mentioned. Also, you'll see when you connect the estimate to field operations, you'll see it's very scalable. You can use some or all of the information that we send over from the estimate. We're going to show you the information we share, and that's job, organizational information, and specifically from that, it's job titles, subcontractors, vendors. We can even push a project manager, things like statuses, things like that over from the estimate. You can also share reports from the estimate. We'll also go into some detail too on how you can manage your cost or phase codes within the bid and have that shared with field operations. Now, for those folks that are not familiar with the accounting side of things, cost or phase codes is kind of a term that's used amongst accounting systems. And basically, those codes are placed in the estimate so that you can organize the work you're doing for budgeting and costing purposes within a project. And that allows us also to coordinate sending that information over to different accounting systems. You'll be able to see how to set up those codes, but also how you can manipulate how those codes are seen within field operation. Um, we'll also walk through some of the export settings that really makes all this happen. Nice thing too, and you'll see this, and I'm going to show you this on a couple examples, you can actually change those settings for each job that you win. So it's really your choice on what information you want to share and also how that information is to be shared with the field operations products. So again, pretty short webinar, only 30 minutes, so we'll get started in the back end of this thing, but pretty sure we'll have time to show you everything we need. So let's get started. We're going to leave the world of PowerPoint and we're going to open up B2W Estimate, and that's what you're looking at here for the folks who've not seen it. This is the home page for our B2W Estimate product, and it all starts really here in how you set up the estimate and how you set up the codes that I just mentioned. For those of you that use Estimate now, you know that you can use cost or phase codes at any level to decide how you want to push the information from the estimate over to your accounting system. But we're going to show how we use those same codes to leverage how we get the information over to operations. So we're going to look inside a bit. I'm not going to go in the back end. We're going to go right into a bid and show you the different levels of how a bid's put together and also how those codes can be placed to give you the information you want when you share it with field operations. So we're going to go right into my webinar demo estimate. So even on the home page here, there's things that as you start entering things on the home page or the estimate information page of your bid that we're going to be able to share with operations. Things like your job number, because even on the operations side, we can share things with accounting. So we need that job number in there. The project information, the project name, project manager, the status of all these things that we can start here, we can start sharing that information with the actual field operations product. So we're now going to go over and take a look at some of the line items that I have in this bid. So these are truly pay or line items, or you'll see these referred to as estimate items when we get into operations. But this is how I've put the bid together. I've opened up a couple fields here so that you can see what we refer to as a job cost ID field. This is kind of our generic term where you can place your cost or your phase codes. Again, initially could be for your accounting system. And you'll see that some of these actually share the same code, and that's okay. It's, again, all about how you and your accounting folks want to get this information initially from the estimate, and also the way I have that loaded in so that these codes are shared across multiple items is kind of come into play when we talk about how we can track this job and send the job differently over to operations. So now that we've looked at kind of the top level, we've got these coded at the item level. That's not the ultimate way that we can do this to give you more flexibility when you're looking at this bid over in operations. When I go to the estimate detail screen, I'm going to go down and pick one of my items where I've got some detail here. If I go down to my furnish and install 18-inch RCP, you'll see that job cost ID field is there at the item level, just like you saw on the previous screen. But if you look down at the contents of that item, I can code at any level that you want. Anywhere you put a code here, whether it be at a crew level, an equipment type, a labor type, a material, or even at a task level, again, sets it up for accounting, but also sets it up so that we can start seeing how we can extract that information when you want to look at it in the field operations products. Specifically, this information is going to be in with our track module. And you can see that I have I have an 18-inch RCP item with an 18-inch trenching task. And you'll see here, I'm going to show you this for purposes. I've got another one here, another trenching task for 36-inch RCP, all using the same code. And again, that's going to come into play when we show you how you can group or split things apart as you're sharing this information with operations. Now, when sending this information over to field operations from the estimate, some people think that you have to go in and change your coding after you set the job up to go to accounting. And absolutely, that's not the case. We've built a very detailed export that allows you to identify which of those levels you want to use and not use to send over to the field operations product. So now we're going to take a look at the export so you can show you what I'm talking about. Here under the options menu, if I go to the tools options prompt and I come down to imports and exports, I'm going to go into the export settings area. Now, some of you may have never seen this area of the program. According to your permissions, you may not have the ability to get in and do a whole lot in these screens. But this is where we have the export for B2W Operational Suite. Now, because we only have a short time, I'm going to highlight just a few of these settings, and you can see why. There are tons of ways that we can set up different parameters to get the information to go from the bid out to the field operations tools. So again, this session is really not intended to teach you how to set up the export settings, as that truly is a training session in itself. This is to show you that you have really multiple options on when you're pushing this bid out. So if you need assistance with the intricacies, if you guys are using the product, you can always call our support department. They'll be able to give you a little more detailed look at it. So let's look at a few of these settings. The top one, you'll notice it's B2W Operational Suite URL. Now, for accounting exports from the estimate, we use a flat file export to do that. But since we build all our own products, we don't need a flat file export to take the estimate that you're seeing in the background and push it over to field operations. One button top of the screen, and we know where that field operations product sits. So we actually can share that information electronically. If you go down the list here, you'll notice there's one called Group By. And this is a pretty important setting. This setting gives you the ability to send those scopes of work or codes over a lot of different ways. Now, you'll see that we use the term account ID. The term account ID relates to what you'll see over in the operations product we're going to go to in regards to the different scopes of work you send over from the estimate. But for today's demonstration, I'm going to assume that we're using those cost or phase codes that I'll keep talking about to create that account ID. There's other ways that you can create account IDs other than using cost or phase codes, but again, that's a different session. That would take a little more detail. So with this setting, you can group like accounts or scopes of work across the bid and keep things simple for the guys in the field, or you can split things into infinite detail. And it's all based on these settings and how you put these codes into the actual estimate. So take that first one where it says count ID. What that's going to do, it's going to go into every structure in this bid and find anything with the same account ID and group it together to send over to the field operations product. So all of the like work is now grouped and consolidated so that it's a little bit easier for the guys in the field to track that job. But if that's too rolled up for you, you can say, I only want that to happen if that account ID, which is that code, and the description of the work that we're pushing over is the same. Only under those conditions will we start to group things together. We can also use the item number, the item ID, and that account ID to group things. The last one there is it absolutely is the most detailed setting we have. It's saying we're going to look inside the estimate there, and only things that have the same item number, account ID or code, and description will do any kind of grouping. So it really gives you a lot of ways that you can split things apart so the guys in the field will really track a more detailed job or consolidate things to make it a little bit easier for them. A lot more in here though. If you look at things like equipment fuel cost or unit of measure for fuel cost, those kinds of things, it gives you the ability to say what you're going to use when you push this information over. You can even have the export create things that you put into the estimate that may not already exist over in operations, such as materials. If you have a brand new material here, well, then you can have that automatically created in the job when you push it over. The job status, the status of the job that it takes on. Up to 5 B2W estimate reports can also be attached and sent over with this job. So it really is a lot of things you can do. Even what is creating that account ID? Well, I've got it set so that item level job cost ID that you're seeing right here will create what we call an account ID that you can use as trackable cost information in the field. And then you decide, is it the task that I've got here? Is that going to pull that out? You decide any level, material, crew, individual labor type, whatever you want to pull out and have the guys track. You can even have the information excluded that you don't want to send over. Maybe you're not going to track miscellaneous costs in this job. You don't want it to go over to field operations. So it's truly up to you on how you use these account settings to really, these export settings to really give you what you want. And there's lots and lots and lots of options. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to go back up to the grouping here and just mention this. We're going to use for the grouping for my first example when we push this job over, we're going to use the most granular level. We're going to go down to item ID, account ID, and description. So when I push this bid over, it's only going to group things that fall under those circumstances. So let's close this up and show you what this looks like. So for the next part, we're actually going to export this job over, and then we'll go over and show you what kind of information follows it. So when I go to send to B2W Operations Suite, I'm going to hit the button. What it's doing now, it's actually scrubbing the contents of the bid and comparing it to what you want to send over. If you're missing anything as far as what needs to be coded or what needs to be done, you'd get a list of things that you need to go tune up before this export would be successful. In this case, we did everything right. I'm going to hit OK, and now we're going to go to our Operations Suite. And this is what I mentioned again for the folks who haven't seen this. This is our operational suite of products. We've got B2W Schedule to schedule your resources, your people, your equipment out to your job sites. I keep talking about Track. Track is a way for the guys to actually collect their data, their quantities, their employee hours, equipment hours, materials, and things in the field. Based on how we sent the job over, it immediately compares how you bid the work cost-wise and hour-wise to how the guys are performing that work in real time. And we also have B2W Maintain, which is our equipment maintenance module. And if you'll notice at the top, there's also B2W Inform. That's our data collection tool, which allows you to build your own unique forms and reports and things against it. These all sit on one SQL database. So in essence, they're sharing all the information that I just pushed over. Schedule can use the job site that's going to be created. Track is going to use just about everything we push over. Maintain can use cost codes and scheduling and the different job sites and things. And Inform at all times is listening to this database from the cloud to see if it can use any of the information we pushed over as well. So we're going to go to that one central spot that just happened when we pushed that bid over. We go into the jobs area. These are all your active jobs you're running at any given time, and there's the job we just pushed over. You'll notice here, there's all the different tabs that were completed when we did that button click, that it pushed over the job number that we set up. It matches on rate classes, so it can establish the labor rates in this bid. It creates automatically a job site for your scheduling system if you're using the schedule product, sets up the category. It even produced the project manager that I had set up in that bid. And then down below, the attachments, these are up to 5 B2W Estimate reports that if the guys need to review, maybe they need to look at that work order report, which is a report that shows how you bid the work. So they'll be able to go in and see that while they're here. And again, I didn't do this in any of this ahead. This happened exactly when I pushed the button to get this over here. Materials come over. Your material list from that job gets populated, comes over with the unit cost that you agreed upon when you set the bid up. Your subs and vendors get populated. There's your subcontractors, your vendors, and in the background, they're associated with the services and materials that they're going to provide. Your pay items came over, just exactly the way that we had that bid put together. Now, that whole grouping part with account IDs and things looked at these items to see how we can set up what we call tracking accounts to present to the guys in the field. So the reason we do that is a lot of folks tell us the way they bid the work is not necessarily the way that they want to track that work. If it is, these two look exactly the same. But if you remember, I told it, don't group anything that I have coded in that bid unless the item number, that account code, and that description match. So I've got 9 pay items here that I pushed over, but when I go and look at how I'm going to present it to the guys in the field, it is much more detailed. There's 11 different what we refer to as production accounts that we've presented for the guys in the field. So it pulled out the mobilization, the Common X, the Mass X, the fine grade, the rough grade. It even went into that pipe item and grabbed that 18-inch trenching task, and right below here, it grabbed my 36-inch trenching task. So again, gives you unlimited ways on how you can work with those codes and how you set up your bid and the export parameters to give you unlimited detail when you hand it off to the guys in the field. Let's look at another example though. I'm going to blow this job away. We're going to delete this job and we're going to go back to the home page here. And as I mentioned, what you can do here is you can actually set those export parameters up differently for each bid or each job. So now we're going to go back to that options menu. We're going to go to tool options, back to export settings, and back to my operational suite. And we're going to change that group by. I'm going to see if we can group things together. So we're going to choose just account ID, where it's going to go through the estimate and find anything with matching account IDs or those cost or phase codes. It's going to group that work together. So let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to go here. Now with that bid, hit the button. It's doing the same thing. It's looking to see if I have any mistakes or if I'm missing any information. It again would give me a list of anything that I need to go in and tune up to give me a successful export. Looks like everything is good. Now we go back to operations. We go back into our jobs area, and there's the same job. So the same job is going to be there just like the one that we just pushed over. We're going to go right in there. Same information, same pay items, but now how we told it to group those cost codes is going to make this tab look a lot different. Again, we've got 9 pay items we pushed over. We go into our tracking accounts area. All my excavation work is rolled up with rolled up quantities, cost, man hours, equipment hours, all that's been rolled up. Grading, mobilization, paving, pipe, all those double items have now rolled up with rolled up quantities. And you'll notice what it did also, it also reached into both of those pay items. And the pay items there actually had that matching task. So the matching task actually grouped its numbers and pulled in there. So the question is, can you show where the project manager is in the estimate? Absolutely. We'll go back to let me just finish up here and I will catch your question here in just a minute. So bear off with that one. This is what we wanted to show you, basically to show that you have tons of options on how the estimate is shared within field operations. So first up, I want to thank everybody for joining us for the bulk of the demonstrations. We're going to do a Q&A here in just a second. The whole thing that we wanted to show you today is I want to make sure that we're able to show you a few tips on how to leverage B2W Estimate to its fullest in sharing the information with B2W Field Operations. So let's go back to the world of PowerPoint, and we will address that question as well. That question, basically what happens is in the bid, well, go back to the bid. On the estimate information, you'll notice that I have created a customized field, a user-defined field for a project manager. When you have that project manager set up in your operations database, I put his employee ID number there. That's what keys it to automatically assign the project manager inside the estimate. So that's how we get the project manager from the estimate page over into the field operations page. All right. Any other questions? While we're waiting on questions, we'll again go back to PowerPoint here. I want to mention that we have another webinar coming up. We have one on June 18th. It's going to be about tracking time and material work within B2W Track. So definitely keep an eye out for that webinar. If there's folks who don't have our products and you want a little bit deeper look, you can always call our sales department at the number you see on the screen. Folks that have our products that want to, maybe figure out how they can set up some of the settings like the project manager, things like that, you can always call our support department. We'll be glad to help you. Well, we're really almost time to be done here. It looks like we've got no further questions. So on behalf of Anthony and myself, I want to thank you for joining us today, and definitely keep a lookout for the next webinar in the 30-minute expert series. Thank you very much, folks.